This is Jeff Goldfinger here with the STEM Signal. We have our first guest of the channel. This is Livia Tepshi, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our viewers, Livia.
Hi, Jeff. I'm happy to be the first interviewed person for your channel, and also a little bit stressed, a lot of responsibility for that.
No
Um,
problem.
how could I describe myself? This has always been a tricky question for me, not knowing where to start from. I could say I'm a scientist, but I would start it from I'm a citizen of the world. I was
Great.
born in Albania, and I moved to Italy when I was 18 to study pharmaceutical chemistry. So I spent around 6 years living in Italy, and during the last year, I participated to an Erasmus program where I did an internship at a big research center in Paris called CA, and it's there where I started to be more in contact with the research lab. I had already started, but in Pisa, it was mostly where I did my studies. It was mostly chemical synthesis, while in Paris, I was trying to crystallize some of these compounds that I produced with some proteins, and also I did some protein production. It was completely something different, and I was learning a new skill. When I first went to Paris, I never thought that I would have stayed it for so long. So my internship was prolongated, and finally, I had, I think, the longest internship ever, because it was more than 1 year, calculating also the period that I did in Pisa. And they proposed me to apply for a PhD in the lab. So I sent the documentation, and I was selected. I was super happy. I started the PhD in France at the CA.
So the long interview, you said it was the longest internship,
Yes.
and that was a good thing. That was long, right? It wasn't because you were, right? It was.
Yes, it was good because I started doing something else, and they wanted me to do accomplish other tasks. So generally, when you are in a PhD, during a PhD, you have a research project, you work on that, you get results at the end. An internship during a master's time is supposed to be a period when you just get practical knowledge, and you work on a research project, but it's a much shorter period. Well, I had this longer time that helped me learn more and also understand more what I wanted to do.
Great. And just for our US viewers, so Erasmus is basically a European education exchange program. Is that a good way to explain it?
Exactly, yes. There
Yeah,
is
it's
also the
not something our
equivalent.
US viewers would know about. That's why I just wanted to make it clear
Yes,
to.
you did good to clarify. There is also the equivalent for the US and for other countries. I
Mhm.
forgot the name right now, but Erasmus is specifically for Europe countries.
Okay, good. And how did you get into the STEM business? What excited you about science as as you were growing up? Do you remember how far back you had your first interest in science?
Let's say that the key word here would be curiosity. Since I was a kid, I was very curious. I wanted to learn new things and to understand. If I go back to high school times, I was very much interested into exact sciences like mathematics. I used to participate at the Olympiads of mathematics and got the first place several times in my natal city. And after that, also biology and chemistry were my favorite subjects. I
And
think
the
that
obvious question here, obviously, because you're a woman, did you find yourself as a lone woman in those Olympiads, or was there a group of young women there, or how did you feel about that? What did you
maybe
notice and observe?
maybe for mathematics there were less women.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, there were quite some in Albania. The majority were men, but there were still some women. Well, it's not the same case in biology or chemistry. I think it's maybe the opposite.
I got a bachelor's in computer science and electrical engineering. And in the 5 years I was there, I could probably count the number of women in my classes on one hand. I mean, in all 5 years, right? It was like one a year. So it was, and I'm being a little probably hyperbolic, but it was very rare. And it's good to see that we've kind of shifted that narrative now to a much more gender equality tone.
Maybe in engineering, it's still there's still more men than women, but hopefully there are in other fields things are changing.
Yeah.
So both sides are interested in sciences.
Okay, so you got your PhD, and now you have a job at a regular pharmaceutical company, and you don't have to name the company. You're not here as a representative of your company. You're here as a representative, a STEM-educated career woman who's advancing in her career. So tell us a little bit about the work you do now.
I'm working as a medical writer and advisor. I'm searching for new literature of non-clinical data and clinical data. The latest one, I'm gathering information coming from them and preparing documentation to present to authorities in order to get an approval for the products. And when I say checking the literature, I mean also the toxicological part, the safety part, the efficacy part, in order to be sure that what we deliver, it's safe for the patients.
Okay, good. And so that's not lab work. That's more, research or I should say academic work. One of the episodes I had in my channel, we talked about the power of narratives and how basically we as humans, what made us successful as a species was our ability to language, the ability to create linguistic narratives that are appealing. I guess my question for you is, do you find a difference in the writings between different authors, that some are a little more enjoyable to read and others you just have to bang your head with a hammer just to get through it?
Well, that's a nice way to describe it. Yes, of course. That the ability to express yourself, to write in an easier way, it makes the narrative more interesting and it makes the information more accessible. But when it comes to publication, to scientific publication, most of them are written in a complicated way.
Right.
And it's mostly when you present or when you have other kind of documents that are opened to everyone, even to people who don't have a scientific degree, then the authors try to write down these documents in an easier way to understand. This is something that scientists have always been criticized for.
Yes.
Like their capacity of analyzing very complicated things, but not being able to express it with easier words. And maybe professors, those who teach at university, they are different because they're used to transfer the information to the students through lectures, so they need to keep it easy. My professor and my former in crystallography, when I was in Paris, used to say in very simple words, when I had to make a presentation, he said, "Listen, Livia, nobody likes to feel stupid, so keep it easy. Otherwise, they will be angry if you're gonna make it too complicated." So
right, and that's part of the problem is there's a mentality among some scientists, you not resembling that, but some scientists, that they have to make it very high level to sound smart, right? They want to sound like they spent their research dollars wisely. And it's interesting because there's kind of a movement now. Professor Dawkins, I don't know if you know, he was talking about how it should be the role of the STEM educated to be more conversational, so that we can, if you're going to convince the populace of something and politicians aren't very good at describing science, then it really is up to the scientists to describe their work in a way that's embraceable. So I don't want to get on my high horse right now. That's not the topic for today's talk, but I'm glad we deviated a little bit. So what you and I had talked before, and I was really intrigued by the situation you were in when you had finished your PhD and you were looking for some postdoc work, and you were surprised that you had sent out all of these resumes and nobody was calling. And so this, say a little bit about how you felt as a, what you thought was at the pinnacle, right? Having achieved your PhD and realizing that it takes more than just intelligence and capability to actually advance your career.
When I think of that time, I was disappointed when I
Right.
finished the PhD and I was not able to find a job directly, a postdoc directly. So what happened is that maybe I had a lot of ideals. I thought that once I would finish the PhD, every door would open in front of me and they would be asking for me. But it didn't happen like this. And now I understand why. So there are several reasons. First of all, is that there are so many PhD students finishing out there. You also are trying to impress people that don't know how you work just by your CV or a motivation letter that sometimes it's very similar from one to another and
Mm-hmm.
lacks originality. So at that time, I participated to several classes of how to improve your CV and resume, but somehow it just didn't work. So I even participated to forums and I tried to talk to people directly. I think I also was different at that time because you're used to this academic environment and it's you have some kind of lack of confidence as well. Some describe the scientists as arrogance maybe, but others would say those who lived with scientists and who worked in the lab, they realize how frustrating sometimes is to be part of a research project with experiments that sometimes work, sometimes don't work. And when you repeat them, you can get maybe different results and you need to understand and to go into detail of things. It requires a lot of patience. We were not prepared for a world when you need to show your knowledge and in a way that everybody understands them and in a way that it's more attractive. So this is something that is missing during the PhD times, but hopefully I managed to pass that period. I found my first postdoc, now that I think of it, in not so long time, but at that time it seemed an eternity. It was,
What did you attribute to the success of finding that postdoc position?
I don't consider it as such a big success, to be sincere. The fact that I found the two postdocs, it was a mix between luck and persistence. For me, the biggest change and that I consider a success is when I managed to switch from academia to a private company, because
Okay.
this was very complicated for those who work already in academia and want to make this switch. They already know they're forced sometimes to do another master's of 1 year, of 2 years, or to to pay and to do some extra internship, sometimes to pay to work in a company.
Mm.
And after all these studies, I think that this is too much. Uh, but I also got lucky at that period, and I realized that networking was the key.
So now is where you're speaking my language, and that's really what I'd like to bring to my viewers is your CV does not get you a job, right? That's the real point you were trying to make. It's not about what's on a piece of paper, which is only going to get worse. I saw an article today about how how AI is now going to be reading all the CVs. So you're going to use AI to help design your CV so it can be read by an AI, right? That's not the way you found success. And what I have found in my work with the STEM educated, it is all about networking. It is about human to human interaction. It is about relationships. It is about understanding human psyche and being able to work with other people. So you say you got lucky. I don't believe it is luck. I believe you recognized the value of actually talking to humans who appreciated the work that you had done and your ability to communicate with them. So if you want to say a little more about your networking and how that worked out for you.
Of course. I'm sorry, but I have to go a little bit earlier in time before I started the networking, because actually this was a very important point in order to get the job that I have today. This was
Okay.
during COVID times.
Yeah.
So as you know, we were all isolated, especially I was living in Paris at that time. And during 2 months, we weren't allowed to go out from our places. It was just
Mhm.
once per week during 1 hour, something like this. So during that time, um, I had data to analyze, and I had also to write articles. But in the same time, I had also a lot of free time because most of my job was doing experiments in the lab. So
Mhm.
I was lacking this part. I had more free time and I wanted to get more informed on this new virus that was going on. So I started reading references on this. And during that time, I had discussions with a friend and colleague of mine who is Italian and is working in a research lab in Belgium. So he told me, listen, there is this webpage, Italian one, when people gather together for free, gather information, they make it easier to understand everything that is written in publications of 15 pages, 11 pages. They make like a small paragraph and
Mhm.
they prepare it for Italian doctors so they can have the information of this new literature coming out so fast from all over the world because they were treating patients and the situation in Italy was really bad.
Mhm.
So I was happy to help at the time. And it started like this. And I was thinking, why not to do the same thing for Albania?
Hmm.
I started contacting some of my closest friends that were working in research from Albania. But during that time, and serendipity, something else happened in the same period. So I was called from an Albanian television who was making a special transmission on Albanian scientists all over the world. And they wanted to know more about COVID in each of these countries. So there I realized that there existed already something like this in Albania. There existed this group of scientists, and they had already started doing this. So I asked to join the group and we started doing this work. I was working in parallel between the Italian page and the Albanian one. And it was during that time that I got more in contact with vulgarization of science, with writing itself. And I realized I liked it, and especially because I felt that I was helping.
Mhm.
So once this period finished, and I was struggling to find another job after the postdoc, I realized once on LinkedIn another PhD, an excellent scientist, how I discovered afterwards, which was very good at writing posts describing exactly the situation of the PhDs, but also in a funny way, in sometimes ironical way, but I really liked her way of writing and I found myself on
A
that
more
same.
human way,
Exactly.
right? It
Yes.
wasn't, it wasn't sterile, right?
Yeah,
And it
totally.
wasn't academic. And
No,
that's what
not at
helps
all.
us, that's what helps us
Connect.
thrive in the workplace. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I love hearing these stories because it's exactly what I've been telling my viewers is, be when you are more authentically human, that's what makes it attractive. You said, being attractive to an employer, it's about being human and authentic. It's not about a single piece of paper on a CV. So sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, thank you. I totally agree with that. So the Livia of before wouldn't have the courage to write to her and just have her contact and propose to have a small talk to talk for a few minutes. But at that point, I don't know, maybe this situation of desperation, it gave me more strength and courage, and I said, I have nothing to lose. She is like me, I'm gonna write to her.
Yep.
So I introduced myself and I said, I really like the content of your posts. Would you have some time one day to have a call? She was very open to this.
Hmm.
We had a call. It lasted around 30 minutes, and she showed me a little bit her experiences also during her interviews with companies where everyone asked for more experience in industry, and they wanted to. They also criticized us that we don't have we don't have knowledge about how an industry works, and
Hmm.
our language is purely academic.
Mm.
So after all these kind of things, then I showed her my experience with Albanian group of scientists, and then it was her who told me, "Why don't you try the career in medical writing? I think it could be a good fit of you. Look." And then she sent me some of her contacts that were looking for this kind of position. I had different calls. At that moment, I started really discussing with people. It was not just send a CV and a letter of motivation, but people got interested in me, and it was such a relief. And then it came the opportunity in Germany, who was the one that um, was concluded first. So it was still a big change because I had been living in France for 7 years. All my friends were there. I had
Mhm.
my passions, my life was everything was there, but I really needed this change in my career, and I decided to move to Germany, where I'm living now since 2 years.
In the description below, I'm going to put a link to one of my earlier episodes. I have an episode titled "The Three Words You Need to Survive," and it's offers, requests, and promises. And I love listening to your story because it involves all of that. You made offers of help to people, right? Then they made requests of you. Hey, you made an offer to help Albania, right? Somebody made a request for you to join to help the doctors in Italy. You then made an offer to help doctors in Albania do the same thing. And then somebody in Germany said, why don't you do this? But she made
Yes.
a request of you, or you should try, or made an offer to you. So what I've told my viewers in the past, if you look at that episode, it's those three words that allow us to network. That is the beauty of networking, is making offers to people, offers of help that they need, making requests of people if you need some help, and making promises. Promises and an offer are basically the same, living up to the capability you have. Those are the three words that allowed us to survive on a very dangerous, African plain, 100,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago. We made offers of help. Hey, let's go kill that woolly mammoth together. Let's go, right, hunt for antelope together. And people were making offers and requests. There's even a really interesting article I read that our really ancient ancestors, Homo australopithecus, may have had midwives, may have used actually others of their species to help with birthing. So that's what makes us human, is making offers and requests back and forth to people in order to advance our career, which is what I love to focus on. So one of the things you've mentioned a couple of times is the difference between academia and industry. Where do you go? What do you do to help with understanding the language of industry compared to the language of academia? And by the way, I'm using language in a very broad sense. I'm not just talking about individual words, but the way that industry thinks, right? They think at a different level than academia, because it's, more profit and financially oriented. You're talking about employees, and it's a whole different way of thinking through problem solving. So do you do anything to enhance your understanding of industry?
There is not a way in academia to prepare us to go to industry afterwards. So we arrive after the PhD, after the postdoc, and we have difficulties in getting inside the industry. Then I'd say that for someone who finished the PhD, it's easier to adapt. It's more flexible because during those years we're used to a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. We're used to learn things very fast and to be in contact with different techniques that make us absorb them easily. So it's not difficult to adapt yourself to industry once you're in. The problem is to get inside the
Mm.
industry and to get the trust that you're going to be a good asset for the company.
My last video was on trust. I actually did part 1 and part 2. I'm going to do part 3 here shortly, where I talk about the hormones involved in trust, testosterone and oxytocin, and how we develop trustworthiness. That's why I started the STEM signal. Is I want to be helpful to academicians make that transition if they want, or if they don't want it, doesn't matter. But the STEM signal is designed to help the STEM educated advance their career signal among the workplace noise. Now, if you want to stay in academia, the videos that I have will help you do that. But more importantly, if you want to make that jump into industry, you do have to understand the language of industry. So I made some videos along those lines of narratives, the 3 words you need for survival, trustworthiness. So those are all covered. I'll make sure I put links in the description about that. But yes, that is in fact a problem that I've seen as well, not only from my days as a student, but even today when I hang around academicians. I do go to conferences, whether it's mostly academics, and I see the problem they have talking in a way that makes them attractive to industry. Have you noticed some of your STEM educated colleagues, maybe when you were still in academia or maybe now that you're in industry, do you see what mistakes people are making in terms of not being able to advance their career, not understanding the social skills that they need in order to advance?
Unfortunately, yes, several. And what I have learned is that being smart isn't enough. You need to show to other people what you have inside your mind, and that is not very easy sometimes. So one of the mistakes, I would say, it's the lack of self-confidence.
Hmm.
This is something that I've realized very often in academia. And when you don't trust in your own capacities, then you won't be able even to convince others that you're able to do that.
Right.
And it requires time to overcome that. So
For my
most
listeners, I want to amplify something. So earlier, Livia, you were talking about arrogance and sometimes how scientists can be a bit arrogant, right? So there's a fine line. If we look on a spectrum, we have arrogance over here and we have lack of self-confidence over here. So what we need to be is somewhere in the middle. What Fernando Flores, one of my mentors, would say was called emotional fortitude. The ability to be confident in yourself, but at the same time, not have some arrogance that you're not open to the ideas and the interactions with others.
Yes, totally.
Arrogance is what Fernando would characterize as a mood space, a negative mood space, right? So confidence being a positive mood space, arrogance being a negative mood space. I'm going to have a lesson on moods in the future. When scientists hear about moods, they automatically kind of, reel back and say, well, that's not hard science. No, it is. It's about interaction with people. It's about behavioral economics, right? Our ability to work with others is a function of our moods. And when you talked about, being at work and you have to work on a project, and sometimes it's not going well, sometimes you get different results the next time you run the experiment, that can put you into a mood. And if that mood is one of arrogance or other limiting type moods, it's going to prevent you from working with your colleagues. It's going to prevent you from advancing your career. And it's going to prevent you from being attractive to other offers from either academia or industry.
If you tend to have an arrogant behavior, you won't be able to learn more. You won't be open to accept that some things you don't know, and you need to learn in order, or need to listen to the others in order to understand and to progress.
The one positive mood that Fernando talks about that is this mood of wonder. No matter how smart you are, walking around in a mood of wonder, about wondering what, I don't know, wondering why that person said what they said, wondering why the experiment, instead of being disappointed and angry that an experiment didn't turn out the same way twice, you can be in a mood of wonder about that. And the more successful researchers have that curiosity. You mentioned it at the very beginning. Your curiosity is what drove you into the field of science in the first place. So, imagine adopting that even at your stage of life with a full-time job and a PhD, you can still have a lot of curiosity and wonder.
If Fleming had stopped at the moment when his experiment was not going as he wished, we wouldn't have penicillin today. So
that is a great way to summarize what we've been talking about. All right, well, coming up at the end of our time together, is there anything else you would like to share about what it's like being a STEM educated young person trying to advance your career? What are you noticing in your workplace, especially the more senior folks, those who have managed to achieve career success in your company? What are some things that you're noticing that you're curious about?
I'm always surprised to learn more and to find new people, inspiring people from whom I can learn more. I can also say for the people who are following your channel that they should never stop to ask questions, to search, to understand themselves better, and also to get renewed every time in a certain way. Today I'm working as a medical writer and advisor, as I said before, but who knows where life will bring me tomorrow, what other things will drive my curiosity and will make me evolve at another step. So never stop being interested in science, in everything that is around you and that interests you. Never stop searching.
I'm gonna hit you with a surprise question. So you said you spent 7 years in Paris. I'm leaving for Paris tomorrow. I've been there many times on business, but I've also seen all of the standard tourist places to go. Can you name one place that I should go see that I probably haven't seen, that most tourists don't bother going, but was one of your favorite places?
Well, one of my favorite places is a place that you probably have seen because it's also touristic, the Montmartre.
Montmartre, yes,
Catholic,
I love it up there.
Basilica. I
The
love
art,
that
the
place.
artists and stuff that sit up there. Oh, it's beautiful.
Exactly. Then you can, all the museums in Paris are beautiful. There is one region also that now during summer is very nice. It's along the Seine. It's
Mhm.
called Gare d'Austerlitz.
Okay.
I was thinking about that just yesterday with some of colleagues that wanted to go to Paris. That's why I remembered. Then all the parks in Paris during this time are beautiful if you
Oh, of
just want.
course. Yeah, I love them. All right, Livia, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, and hopefully so do my viewers. Please, if you want to see more of these interviews, please put some comments in the video, and I'll make
For
sure
sure.
Livia gets to hear your feedback. Good luck in your career, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. The same, and have fun in Paris.
Let's get down, let's get